Welcome to Professor Game Podcast, where we interview successful practitioners of games, gamification, and game thinking who brings the best of their experiences to get ideas, insights, and inspiration that help us in the process of getting the students to learn what we teach. And I'm Rob Alvarez. I teach and work at IE Business School in Madrid, where we create interactive and engaging learning materials. Want to know more? Go to professorgame.com/subscribe, start on our email list, and ask me anything. Engagers, this episode is quite different. It is the audio that I took from the live stream that Dustin, Staats, and I did on Facebook and Instagram. I'd love to know what you think of it, so subscribe on the email list that I just mentioned. If you are already there, just click reply and let me know what you think to any of my emails. I'm sure there's a lot to learn on my side. You can find the show notes on professorgame.com by typing COVID-19 on the search bar. Now, go ahead and enjoy the episode.
I'm excited to chat a little bit about what we're talking about, which is online learning, especially looking at games for online learning, especially because of our current situation. I know we were chatting before, and you're in Spain. I'm in Los Angeles. We're kind of in different parts of the world in different situations dealing with the world crisis. One thing I've been talking about or asking people, what is something you've been doing to kind of deal with maybe your change in day-to-day interactions? I can answer that question, and maybe you can think about an answer as far as something you've been doing personally. But for me, I've been able to go out for a run. Luckily, we're still able to go outside and get some exercise because it's been really hard to manage time inside, and the weekend being inside and then switching gears and trying to shut off from work. So I don't know if something you've been doing. I've also been playing games every day with my wife, so that's been fun. But maybe if you want to share something that you've been doing before we get into our topic.
Sure. I would say the funny thing is, well, here in Spain, the quarantine law, as you might expect, and especially in Madrid, where kind of it all started. I know those on Instagram, I can see virtual measures. Julian, saludos de Chicago. Hola, Julian, from Chicago. If you can't hear me well, let me know, because I know I plugged the earplugs and I put the microphone near, but I'm not sure if it's ideal. But anyways, if you don't, just let me know on the chat. So for me here in Madrid, given that the measures are definitely and should be more strict at this point, we are not supposed to go out except for going for food and medicine, basically, and people who don't have the possibility of working from home, which I do and my wife does as well. So we basically have not left the house, and this Friday we'll have made like 15 days of literally not stepping outside the building at any point.
Wow.
We had the chance of purchasing
days?
goods. Sorry?
I'm sorry, you said 15 days you've been inside?
Yes, 15,
Wow.
15 on Friday.
Wow.
So 14 days, two full weeks, but we're not expecting to go out anyways. We went to the supermarket. We had the chance of going to the supermarket several times before because the funny thing is, right before this whole crisis was actually like getting stronger, a student of my wife, which he was here in Madrid for a week, was then diagnosed a week after with the virus. So of course, precautions, what we decided was to do a self-quarantine. We spent that, like the second week, we had been 1 week outside. It had already happened when it was diagnosed. So we spent the next other week it was 2 weeks since this happened. We spent that week as well in the house, and we had just again purchased goods. We came back and we said, well, this looks bad. Let's purchase some, like normal. We didn't like take all the toilet paper out of the supermarket,
right.
But we did get some stuff. And I can say that we are currently at least well provisioned in that sense.
That's good. Yeah. I mean, for us, we're not quite as extreme. Here in Los Angeles, we're just on a safer at home is the name of the provision, I guess they might call it. So it's just trying to stay at home as much as possible. Restaurants are open for takeout. You can go to grocery stores, essential businesses, which is funny how they define essential businesses sometimes. But I mean, there are things that are more necessary for others. We just hope it doesn't get too bad here? I don't know. I'm not an expert based on what experts are saying. It's not looking.
The thing is, what it seems like is the sooner you get, the more extreme you get, the sooner, the easier it'll be to manage that, so to speak. So I would say that it's sooner the better in a way.
Right.
It's sort of the strategy that seems to be winning right now.
Right.
I don't know how it'll end or when it'll end or anything, but it seems like that is sort of the wisest thing to do right now. Like self-isolate as much as possible so that you can protect yourself and others. So that would be like my general recommendation. Like here in Spain, I think it could have, I mean, it's true that it was like the third country to be like really hit very strong or something like that. It was one of the first ones. But now that we have more information, I think that most governments should start like stronger recommendations in this sense. I'm from Latin America, and the risks there are huge because the health system is kind of more complicated. But that's not a topic of today. I don't want to get too gloomy on this conversation where we're trying to get people to to understand what some of the stuff that we're doing, what could be exciting about that, and so on.
Right. Well, I mean, it has to do a bit with our conversation or a lot with our conversation, because we're in this situation, and we were talking about this before, and I talked with another educator earlier this week. We are trying to decide what's best in this situation for ourselves and for our students. And why we're kind of having this conversation is to help support educators or teachers who are in a situation where they're trying to decide what to do for their students who are online now. That's true.
I think it's a good time to get a formal introduction of each other. We're sharing lives both on Facebook and Instagram. This is, at least, I guess, as I mentioned at the start, it's my first. The thing is that I want to make sure that both our audiences are aware of who we are. We've both been in each other's podcasts, so there should be at least some familiarity.
Right.
But we'll see. So my name is, I'm Rob Alvarez. I am here right now, as I mentioned at the start. I'm in Madrid. I have the Professor Game podcast, which is one of the main things related to games and gamification. But I also work and teach at IE University in Madrid. And at this university, we've been doing many things online for, well, when I say we, it's because I'm part of it, but they've been doing it for 20 years now or so. So there's a lot of experience in online. Nobody had experience of going from face-to-face to online in like a week. But experience on the general idea was an advantage that we did have. And as well, having some technology that is already there, that is what we're translating into, was definitely a huge advantage. And we were like moving very, very early in that sense to go online or to have the online alternative, and then it became mandatory. So that move was relatively smooth when thing had happened, like what you can see. But then there is, of course, all the work behind it that I can see as a professor teaching, like starting teaching right now. Last Friday was my first class of the period. All the work, like the instant work that it requires from one day to the next, of changing from a live face-to-face setting into an online setting. And there's a lot more that we could do if we had more time and more, we had more of a chance for planning and even redesigning some things. But, this is supposed to be a temporary situation, so we make the best out of it. So that's my quick intro.
Right.
Dustin, what are you doing in LA?
It's a great question. So I'm the host of Board Game with Education, for anyone not familiar with the podcast. And we talk about how we can use games and education or game-based learning, or using gamification, other ways we can leverage games for learning. And this week, I've been trying to chat with as many game-based educators or experienced educators who use games for learning, and really kind of considering how we can transition ideas we've been doing in our physical classrooms to an online setting. It's been a challenge because, like you said, no one's been asked to do this before in a week, and a lot of our materials are just not easily transferable to an online setting. So we kind of been talking about, I'm excited to chat about this with you too, is answering some questions about how we can use games for learning, especially online. Yeah,
definitely. And one of the quick experiences that comes to mind right now is well, it's going to be like in the opposite direction. One of the things that I had planned for this period, and I think we won't be able to do it, is we have sort of a Lego game in which students have to build up things with Lego. It's an operations course, so it has to do with like sort of if you were manufacturing something and so on. It's very physical. I mean, by essence, it's literally grabbing pieces and putting them together in a certain order and
Right.
and taking a look at the quality and so on. So that's something we won't be able to do. It's a lot of fun. It's very exciting, and we'll have to substitute it for something else.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You can't do that. You can't do that remotely, right?
No, and we were going to. We still might if things get better sooner rather than later. I'm doubtful. But the other thing we were going to do, we were going to visit a brewery.
Oh, okay.
Huge brewery. Students get very excited about that trip. So that was super cool. There's a lot of learning there. We ask them to make a presentation in the class right after. So it's like 3 sessions where it's got to completely change from one thing to the other. So it's one of those challenges that you say. The good thing is it wasn't one of the first sessions, so I don't have to do it that fast.
Right.
But I'm still uncertain whether it'll happen or not. It seems like it's not. And I'll have some time to, sort of see how I can figure it out. But I have to definitely change it. My lesson plan is going to be affected directly because I have those sessions I didn't have planned before. And one of the good things from what we had planned is within the syllabus, there are, out of the top of my head, I can think of at least 2 or 3 digital simulations, which I will definitely still be conducting through the video conferences. Some of them might be sent as homework. I have to figure some of that out, but I do want to make sure that they're able to do those things as well. So that's something that will definitely still happen. It's sort of one of them is what they call a soda pop game. So they're manufacturing sort of soda. It's kind of that's the general idea behind it. And they have to manage things like inventory, the numbers that they have to keep in their inventory, what they call the economic order quantity. There's many concepts and very interesting stuff behind that. So it's basically using a game-based solution, which is a game for learning, explicitly for learning. You're not going to do this for entertainment probably, right. But it is quite entertaining. So that's one of the solutions that is definitely still going to be working for us.
So that's an online game that.
Yeah, okay. That was already created. Is from a company. I'm not going to say which country because I might get it wrong. They're listening. They might be. Right. They might not be very happy about it, but it's in the southest part of Latin America. So it's one of those countries over there. Okay. I spoke to the CEO at some point, and I'm testing it out for the first time on this class. I'm very excited to do it, and I'm happy that I chose that over a whatever face-to-face environment because it'll definitely be one of those keys that I can still manage to use.
Right. Awesome. So I know we had thought about some questions to talk about too.
Sure.
And I have one question from someone as well. What was our first question? I don't have the question list with me right here.
I do have it here. I have it here. What component of game-based learning and or gamification is the same, whether looking at it online or offline? I would say there's more in that category than on the category of those that are not common. And why? Right. This goes back to the concept in itself of game-based learning and gamification. I think that what we're usually thinking about here is that and this is going to sound obvious, we're dealing with humans and we're thinking about their motivation. It's not just about pushing content, which is fantastic, and we have to do it, and we have to have great content, and so that they actually have this opportunity to learn a lot. But there's also another component here, which is whether they are engaged with their learning, and it sounds obvious, sounds quick, but it's not always the case, definitely. And that no matter whether you are in online or offline, that is something that you still have to account. How you account for it, might be different. For example, I was talking about delivering a gamification workshop with a large organization that deals with professors and so on. And we were initially going to have a full day workshop. That was the plan. That was what we had been talking about. And of course, with this whole circumstance, in the short run, it's going to be impossible. So we were thinking of a redesign, and of course, just like grabbing a 1 day, full day, like fully immersive 1 day whatever you're going to do. In this case, it was a workshop, but whatever you're going to do, just grabbing that and putting it into a video conference, for example. It could be great, but it's really harder to get people engaged with that, because you can be, for 60, 90, maybe 2 minutes, maybe 2 hours, you can be on this, on end.
Yeah.
But you're spending a whole day in front of a video conference is tougher to bite, so to speak.
Right. I wonder too, I mean, for myself, my personal experience, and I love podcasts and I love watching YouTube videos that teach you something, but a lot of times it's very passive learning. And I wonder if something like that, like an all-day workshop, if that turns into, for me, I think I would turn it into passive learning. I might be there present with my body in front of the screen, but it's very easy for me to kind of do other things and learn passively about what I'm doing.
Yeah, it's very easy to just like unplug from the situation and say, it's going to be there, it's going to be recorded. Maybe it's even not, but your brain is telling it's online. You can't shake hands with this guy or girl, and we kind of disconnect a bit. So that's why it's still not definitive, but just to let you in a bit into the conversation, is we were thinking like, well, okay, we're thinking about this. Ramon is saying hi from Instagram. Hi, Ramon. What we were talking about here is, how do we manage the situation? Because if we still want to do the equivalent of a full day workshop or not, that's the first question. But even if we want to do sort of a half day, still like 4 or 5 hours in front of a video conference, it's tough to bite. So we were, torn between doing like a 2 hour, maybe stretching it to 3 hours in a single shot. But then we came up with the idea of saying, well, why don't we have like on a Monday, then we meet again on a Friday, and then next Wednesday, for example. And there you have time to actually work on things. You can work even on teams, even separately, letting them connect through whatever software they use to connect. And then coming back, getting some feedback on that, maybe do a presentation, get some more content on the next steps, get back and do some more, and then have a final thing where we set them up for what ends up being basically an iteration or a loop cycle.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You definitely need to break it down into digestible parts when it comes to something like that. So the question too was different components or a component of a game that maybe is shared online and offline. And I think one thing that I really like, and I go back to my personal preference, and I really love social games. I love board games, and I see something that's developed as collaboration and culture can kind of both be carried over from an online setting to a offline setting, or from the offline to an online. And one example maybe, and I talked about this the other day, is diplomacy. Have you ever played diplomacy?
I think so. I know there was a book that was like this thick that was called Diplomacy. It was an incredible book, but reading it completely was a tough bullet to bite. Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, the game is like Risk. Have you ever played Risk?
Yeah.
It's kind of like Risk where you're trying to,
which one it is.
Yeah, it's area control where you're trying to conquer, I guess, like Europe and Russia.
I remember one of my friends, hopefully he'll listen to this, both Gary and Joaquin, who said, Risk is, has its detractors. I really enjoyed Risk for a lot of time.
Yeah.
Saying, but that has a dice. Why would you want to leave this to luck? There is so much ability here. And so we were also in a model UN, which is kind of playful as well.
Right.
Have all these abilities and all these things, like let's use this like in a live thing. So
yeah, Risk. I had a lot of fun playing Risk growing up. But diplomacy is, I mean, it's like Risk in a sense where it's area control, but there is no dice. It's all negotiation. Like that's the main mechanic in the game. And I see that as a way to kind of build camaraderie among players in a game. So you could play that offline and you can play it online. There's an online, like a web version of the game too. And you just can communicate either through the online system, or you can just, like my friends and I, we communicate through like Facebook Messenger and I try to get someone on my team to support my units when I want to go into a different territory. So there's that sense of like negotiation and
And
cooperation.
togetherness as well, right?
Right. And camaraderie as a group. Maybe not with the entire group playing at the time, because you don't want to be on everyone's team because you won't win. But you have to find some allies at certain moments to be able to win and come out on top.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. And that whole, again, as you were mentioning, togetherness, if you just do it for isolated learning, it's very cool. I mean, we have something for project management, which is a material that is like super engaging. Some people almost get vicious about it and do it like 20, 30, 40 times. But I mean, Omaira, she's sending her blessings. But that game is individual. It's usually 100% individual. If you can sit in teams, it's going to be a lot of discussion, and it's not always going to lead to the best place. But I can see like the huge value in having people like come together and compete or collaborate, whatever that's going to be. The value of getting people together and that collaboration is, I can see how essential it can get to be as well.
Awesome. I know we prepared a couple more questions. Maybe do you want to jump to one that someone had asked in one of the groups? I kind of had to do a little bit of research, and I was still struggling to find a solid, good answer, but it was...
No, that's good. I think this is a learning process for many of us. We had several... I'm checking out the comments in Instagram. Amani Anagar, I met her in Berlin in Gamification Europe, is saying hi.
Awesome.
I saw Dave joined. Ramon, I already said hi as well. Clemente, Omaira. Eric, which I've seen in several conferences as well. He's now living in Poland. He is also Irish. He comes from Venezuela. So it's a strange combination, like myself living in Madrid, being Polish and Latin American as well. So and having an American accent, just unexpected in Europe.
Yeah. Awesome.
So those were some of the comments I had. I don't know on the Facebook if you can see the questions there. I'm not sure I'm able to do that.
We have someone watching now, but Facebook doesn't share with you who is there. So if you're there on Facebook, say hello.
Hello.
I'm gonna open the video. I hope we don't
do that. That seems to be winning right now.
Right. Little echo here on Facebook. Facebook recently, there's been some technical issues where I don't get to see the comments. So since I'm live here on Instagram, I can't check. I think they might be delayed, if there are any. I can't.
I'm going to comment here. I'm commenting. Can you see that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So at least it seems like we don't currently have comments, which is good. It's fine. We're having fun. I said when I started the podcast, my main objective was to, have conversations with interesting people where I was engaged and I was learning a lot.
Right.
I was pretty convinced that if I was finding value in these conversations and I was having fun, there would be other people who would find some value, maybe the same or different, and that would be great. And that has been the case, and I'm very excited about that. But here as well, like having this conversation, even if we go back and forth with some ideas, hopefully as well, if we get to have the recording, we can share it as well. Some more people get ideas, send over questions. I mean, I'm excited about all those possibilities. So if you have questions right now, great. If not, and you have them for a later time, great as well. The other question that we had, this one could be interesting. We're talking about the enhancing gamification and game-based learning by bringing it into online. So disclaimer here, the first thing, I want to make a disclaimer. With the proper time, for maybe development and getting those things, it is relatively easy for you to be able to pull like more data, maybe have analytics,
right.
Maybe understand your people better because you're online and they're like leaving a trace, which you face-to-face don't have in that same sense. You're picking up data, with your eyes, with your ears, many things, but you're not able to classify it as well as maybe a computer could in many ways. So that could be a potential advantage with the proper amount of time. Like if you put a video that is uploaded, and that doesn't require a special amount of time. If you record a video and you put it there, you can see how many people saw the video. You can see how many people said that they liked the video. Whether that's true or not, that's another discussion. But you can at least see that there's people who said that they liked the video or disliked it. In YouTube, you can do that as well. So it's giving you a feedback that you could definitely have. I mean, when you're in a classroom several times, you start like sensing many things, and you can look around and see.
Right.
But it's, if it's a 100 people class, or in my case, my largest one has been like 54, I think it was, or 55. It's already difficult. I mean, you can't see everybody all the time. You might sense that not everybody is fully engaged, but trying to engage that guy in the back, you're not sure what's going on. Maybe the problem is he has another problem. But when you're online, there's a lot of, data points that can be gathered. So that is a potential advantage that you could have there. The other potential advantage is when you bring these things online, they're relatively easier to replicate. So you do it once and you can kind of, replicate it again in the next time, or most of it you can just replicate, copy and paste. Whereas in face-to-face, you have to just do it over again, many of the things. Not all of them. If you have, for example, a game, there's many podcasts and people I follow that like the whole items and having board games or the board itself. So you can just put that board up there once again, but the whole interactions and maybe part of the things of you giving away the items, that's cool and it's nice. But in online, it's almost immediate depending on how you created it.
Right. I mean, I don't have any, I guess, research off the top of my head. Maybe you can add here. I know that, but I have learned and heard that those badges that are not physical still have some influence on our behavior and our engagement. I'm not sure if you can pull any research, but that's what I've found in some of my learning through gamification. But I think one thing that is really, that you mentioned too, the duplication of what you're doing. If you do it online and you can duplicate it very quickly, I think the iterative process might speed up too. You can recycle what you're doing and put it out there again. I guess one thing that you can't speed up, if you are like a K through 12 teacher, you can't speed up that semester, right? You still got to wait till the end of the semester, end of the quarter, and see what works and what doesn't.
Yeah. As far as research, the first thing I do, because I also work at a university and I have proper, awesome researchers working there, is the first thing is I say, I'm not a researcher, I'm not a PhD. So, anything I say has that disclaimer. And anything I call research is probably not really research in that sense. It's more of an informal kind of research that I can mention. But yes, those badges definitely have value. Otherwise, people wouldn't, and again, just even taking it out of education for a second, why would you pay for a digital item? All those complaints of these games that are saying, oh, you're this micropayments and all this stuff. Why are people complaining about that? Because they're paying for a digital item that doesn't really exist and doesn't give you any tangible thing. You can even argue like, okay, yeah, you gave me a card. Is that card worth anything more than the ink and the cardboard it's in?
Right.
Formally not. So, if you have a card of, a collectible from the 70s from this baseball or football, soccer, whatever player that you had, and it's worth $1 million, it's not because the cardboard and the ink is worth a lot. It's because it has some intrinsic value. Right. And that does not depend necessarily on it being digital or not. And especially, I'm not an expert either in blockchain technology, but for example, now with these technologies where you can have like this uniqueness and that you can just copy and, like in digital, you copy a file and you have another file. If you start using those technologies for badges and other type of recognition, you could say, it's not like, I have a title from Harvard because I copied it from my friend who studied at Harvard. It's got to have value, and you could assign that value through a digital thing, and it will work in the same sense of this is the cardboard I have, and I cannot just break it in two and it'd be worth twice, or photocopy it. Right. It's not going to be worth the same thing. So I do think there is a lot of value there. The evidence, again, besides whatever formal research can be done, is that people pay for that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah. There's our proof, I guess, right there.
Wallets are speaking for people, but again, that's on that end. Yeah. Then in education, again, I love the example of the project management simulation that we have, in which you're basically what you're doing is organizing tennis tournament in Madrid. And there's many decisions you have to make. And one of the things that can happen in the middle of it is they say, well, you didn't like rent the court. And if you don't rent it at least 2 months in advance, or whatever the amount is, you won't get it. So you can't have a tennis tournament without a tennis court. So you're fired and the tournament is not going to happen.
That sounds stressful.
But the thing is, does it matter? I mean, it's a simulation. It's online. Nobody's going to know it. I don't get the feedback as a professor. So nobody's going to know you failed at that. You can just do it again and it's fine. But people can get stressed, or they do it 10 times more because they want to do it, at the most optimum level and so on. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Is it worth something? Is it important for these people? I'm thinking it is.
Right. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, that's good topic.
Yeah, again, there is a lovely element to physical board games and the way that these bring people together. And one of the things you were asking, like, what have I been doing? I wish I were playing a bit more, but I've been extremely and ridiculously busy. But we have like a promise of New Year's, my wife and I, that we're going to play a game at least once a week.
Okay.
So most of the games that we play together are board games.
Awesome.
He's not as into video games as I am. We have like 1 or 2 that we play together, but the rest is our board games. So we play board games every time we can. Those that are for 2 players. Nobody else. We're sticking to our formal quarantine. So
right. Yeah,
it's part of the environment right now.
Yeah, we've picked up, I want to say 3 new board games since we've been in quarantine. Yeah, so it's been fun. Yeah,
I mean, anything from Carcassonne, Azul, that are even for more people, but that can be very exciting as well for 2.
They play
Pandemic.
Well,
I'm amazed how exciting it could be for 2 people.
Players. I think you guys, I don't know if you've played it or have looked into it, but Pandemic Legacy, that was a lot of fun for us to go through. Essentially,
we just have the basic one.
Yeah, it's like so you're playing the first game, and what you do in the first game affects the next game, and you go through 12 months, not real months, but 12 game months, which are 2 games each month. So you play 2 games, and that's January. You play 2 games, that's February. So you could end up only playing 1 game that month. So it could be anywhere between 12 games to 24. Usually you get in between there, but yeah, it's a lot of fun.
It's a lot of gameplay as well, it seems.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. So that's some things that I think are worth thinking about and enhancing the online. There's other good things as well. Once you go online and something usual that people are getting into, and again, it depends on how much time you can dedicate to it, but recording videos for people to see. Yeah. Once you do that once, even if you do it for the online, there's no reason why next year, if things are going, business as usual, there's no reason for you to not use it as well in the face-to-face, send it as homework, so they're more prepared, and you can take advantage of that FaceTime instead of just lecturing, which is fine. I mean, I know lecture has to be done pretty often, but instead of, or besides lecturing, which you can do with that recorded video, hopefully relatively short, you can then sit down and look at what are the issues, what are the problems. You get more feedback once you realize this, and you're able to refine that process and so on. So I think there's many advantages to online. And with regards to the experience that IE had, like initially it was about translating things from the physical world into online. That was like 20 years ago. So you're turning like readings into PDFs, and then why not have videos? And once you have videos, why not put it in a web page? If you have it in a web page, why not make it interactive? And it just like went on. And now we've been doing those stuff for, I don't know, again, around 20 years. And I would say somewhere around 300 different learning materials have been created at some point. Some of them are deprecated for technology reasons, but they're there. I mean, one professor as an author created it with a team. And then, if you sum up all these materials and the times they've been used, it's over 1 million, not students, but people who have touched those internally. That's just for IE. We're also selling them outside. So that number is just like growing exponentially.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's, I mean, just a lot's going on.
Yeah. And again, I think one of the things that will happen, hopefully, is that we as a whole, not just specific universities or schools, will realize that there is value in online. and it'll not just be the cheap solution, which is what sometimes happens. For us, it's definitely not the case, but we have seen many times. Oh yeah, just give me an online thing. I just want to pay something very cheap and quick. It's like, well, there is value, and there's added, as you were mentioning in the question, that there's added value to having some of these things online, actually.
Right. Yeah, I think. Even going back to what you said about creating the video now and then having it as an opportunity down the road. I loved when I flipped my classroom in last year for academic writing for international students, and being able to record a video now, maybe it might be a bit of work. It does take a bit of work to do, especially if you have no experience doing it, but it might be worth it next year to use that video as an opportunity to do that flipped classroom for that lesson where they watch the lecture online, and then in class they're doing whatever homework tasks you might have originally assigned to them.
Yeah, exactly.
So I did have one question from someone that they asked. They have a gamified classroom. So right now their classroom is gamified. And I tried to follow up with them to ask, like, what does that look like exactly? Because their question was, how can they switch their XP tracking, their leveling up, their completing of like quests, I believe. How can they switch that to an online thing where it's instead of students having that, I guess, that data in person, how can they do it online? I mean, my brain instantly went to Excel because we had developed an Excel tracking sheet for that. But it is a lot of work to get it set up. And if you're not familiar with Excel, you might not be great at setting it up in a way that's appealing visually.
As you were saying, like there's options, and but like what I would initially focus on is how are you doing it right now? I think that was the key of what you were saying as well, right? Like, right. I don't know if you do it on a whiteboard.
Maybe
translating a whiteboard.
Like,
sorry,
maybe it's individual student handouts too. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how she's doing it exactly.
But my quick guess is whatever it is that you're doing at this point, I'm pretty sure that it's, again, if it's an individual sheet, for example, and you don't want everybody to be able to see it, that's going to be a bit more. It's going to require a bit more work because you'll have one for each of these students. But it's also true that, once you do it, again, you have one, and all you have to do is copy it to many different people and give them different accesses. I would do something that is like a sort of a shared document, maybe not giving them permission to write, just to read, that if you want to be the one taking care of that. If not, Google Drive also records every transaction, so you can even see who was cheating or whatever. But that would require a bit more work, probably.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
I don't know how that
was a struggle we had when we were remember talking about World's XP on your show, is tracking leveling up for students. And originally we created an Excel sheet, and we created an Excel sheet copy for every student. But then you're going in and you're tracking each student individually. So it is kind of a challenge. I think that just tracking XP in general is a challenge, and it's an obstacle to gamifying your lesson.
But I would say one of the things there is don't be afraid to innovate and to do it a bit different. I mean, oh yes, I have what I usually have when I'm face to face is that sheet that I share with them, and it's a physical sheet, and I sign it or stamp it or whatever. Why don't you have a single sheet? Like, what would be the barriers for having a single sheet that everybody can see? Right. What are the things that are hidden? Maybe you just don't want to show them there, and you have them in a separate sheet where you just have them and send them an email when they see that, versus handing them out, which is probably arguably almost the same amount of time you would be investing. But like, why not just break it down in a different way? Like, if you have something you're handing out, maybe you can have a general one where you have, and everybody can see everybody else. If that's not what you want, maybe you want to have different ones so that they are able to do these things. But
Right. I'm just checking the Facebook stream here. It looks like we should be live.
Yeah. I think we are.
Okay.
I actually shared the video. The thing is, I wasn't able to find it. Like, we were talking, and I didn't want to focus too much on something else. But that's why
Yeah,
I did that just to make sure, but I don't know if you saw that.
It's a juggling thing doing live streaming. I'm learning you have to pay attention to the comments, and so you kind of need an extra person to help with everything too.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I can see the chat on my face for a few seconds.
Oh yeah, yes.
That's part of the situation, and it's fine.
Yeah.
Anyways, there was a final question. I know we promised around 40 to 45 minutes ish. Some simple things teachers, educators can do with gamification, game-based learning online. Simple and quick, I would say. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that, Dustin?
I think going back to what we talked about, I don't know how it would play out though. So because I've never done it, but using some sort of visual badge that people can view on a classroom website. So maybe you build a classroom website and you have different achievements that students can gain while they are remotely learning. So for example, in my school, they're doing something called focus areas, and it's basically skill-based assessments to fill skill gaps. And you could maybe have students, they have to do the minimum, right? And then maybe students do above and beyond so many, they earn this, like, I don't know, adventurer's badge. Not very clever, thinking of something off the top of my head. Or you ask them to read a book, and you ask them to kind of summarize different chapters in the book. And for each chapter they summarize, if they do 10, they get a dungeon map badge or something like that. So I that's just something that popped into my head when I had thought about that question, because it does take a little bit of work. You have to find those badges, so that might be something. And then creating the website, if you don't have experience doing that before, but if you do, it might be something really simple to put together.
Yeah, there's trying to remember, there's something like the open badge or something like that. There used to be something where you had all these badges lying around, and just like in probably you would do in a physical room, it is important to have something that looks like decently well, but I wouldn't focus too much on that, because in the end, the value of the badge, as in a digital game, it's not only how it looks, it's what it represents.
Right.
Always think about the fact that it's in games, sometimes it's about the status that you gain. In an online game, you say, well, this is important and relevant to me because it says that I've been here from the start of the game. Or it says that I am in the top 10%, like whatever it is that it's representing, it's giving you some sort of status. And the status could be, like an icon of a small thing like running. That could be just it. You're the fast one, and it's a stick figure of a guy running.
Right.
And you're the fast guy. You're the fastest one to give the answers. The main thing is the value you assign behind it.
Right.
And that's what I would always invite people to think.
Right.
When you're doing any sort of badging or rewards recognition, what is the value behind it? Unless you're giving away an iPad or something like that, in which case, the value is obvious. If not, like, what is behind it? Like, why would people be interested in having that badge?
Right.
It's interesting about it. It could be that the value is in the art itself, if you're very good with that. I'm definitely not. That's not my expertise. I've improved a lot, but it's not my expertise. My mom is a designer, and she also paints, so she's incredible with that. I'm terrible, terrible.
Yeah, I've worked a bit with graphic design with the podcast and website now, but art, like actual drawing, and that's no good.
That's what I mean. Like, I'm definitely not an expert, and I don't want to not offend, because they're never going to offend somebody with that, but say like, oh yeah, I'm really good with this. I know, first off, I'm definitely not.
Right.
And I know there's people who do great work. So having those basics and have something that is good enough is what I would focus on.
Definitely.
Dustin, I think we are almost running out of time. I don't know if there, I don't think in Facebook we have any questions. Instagram seems to be a bit quieter right now. I don't know if there's any closing remarks that you have. I know I would like to invite everybody to listen to your podcast and see all the amazing things that you guys are doing. But I don't know if we can leave that for the end, but I don't know if there's anything else.
I mean, I would also suggest anyone going to listen to your podcast as well. That should be in the link. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned you just wanted to start because you're having fun having conversations. And I think your podcast is doing more beyond that. There's definitely a lot of valuable content and things to take away from your episodes. I mean, we were chatting through email in your episode 107, right? I think I remember the number correct. Was talking about the process for gamifying something. I think that's super, super valuable stuff. Yeah, I mean, if teachers have any questions as far as how to use games for learning, or if they want to add any resources, if anybody has some resources, I would love to hear from you. I think that supporting each other during this time is the most important thing we can do in our field. There are things that are more important beyond our field, but in our field of teaching and education, I think just finding ways to support each other, like having these conversations that we're doing, is really important. So,
yeah, I hope so. Oh, Gary just joined. We were talking about you, Gary, a little while ago with regards to diplomacy and risk. So hopefully you remember that conversation from, I don't know, like 10 years ago or something. Anyways, thank you for your kind words, Dustin. I take them to heart. I agree with you that there's, beyond, of course, education, there's other things. There is an important message that I do think that we have sort of the responsibility to help get through, and it's of the difficulties that many people are going through, and their individual responsibility of each of us to help stop the spread of this virus. But beyond that, I think there are many challenges. I was seeing some numbers the other day of how many people are not currently in their classrooms or not getting the education they were getting, or maybe not even anything because of the situation. Right. And not everybody has a capacity to go online. So whenever you can, or whatever you can do is going to be super valuable. This is super important. Education is in all of its levels, and getting people who are losing these opportunities is in my view, tragic. So again, all the tools that we can have, that we can provide both for just the online world plus, having games and gamification, and for this whole transition period that we're living through, I think it's super, super valuable. And I think there would be a lot to go through that. So again, I would say thank you for being here. This is our first live. Hopefully we will be able to find this as well at a later time and listen to it if you didn't manage to make it this time. I invite you, as I said before, Board Gaming with Education is a podcast by Dustin. He also has a Facebook community, Twitter, like all sorts of things going around in the internet, an email list, which I invite you to join as well. I think that you have over there. I have an email list as well. You can go to my website and join. The episode 107, by the way, if you're thinking of designing something or creating something, it could be interesting to you the way that I see it. So that's episode, I believe, 107. It was the second anniversary. So if you type that in professorgame.com, type second anniversary, you can hear a relatively short episode where I go through my general ideas on how that could look like.
Right. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. So
Engagers, it is fantastic to have you around. So, this podcast, as I've said many times by now, it only makes sense having you. So let's connect on Twitter so you can let me know who you think we could have as a future guest or a repeat guest even. If you have any questions that you'd like included in the podcast, or anything in general that you'd like me or any of the guests helping you with, you can always find my Twitter account in professorgame.com/Twitter. I like to share content in gamification and education and topics that are related to my work. But hey, wait, don't click continue yet. Do you want to know what Press Start Hong Kong is all about? Then subscribe using your favorite podcast app and listen to the next episode of Professor Game. See you there.